Hi there, everybody. This is Wendy Hernandez, and welcome back to another episode of the Family Law Insider podcast. Are you wondering whether there is sex after divorce? Well, don't fear, there is. And today I have a gal who's going to talk to us about sex after divorce. She's going to talk to us about not freaking out and how you should approach it. So my guest for today is Delaine Moore. And Delaine is the author of a memoir. It's called The Secret Sex Life of a Single Mom. It's available on Amazon, but even more exciting for me and probably a lot of people out there listening is the fact that this is going to be made into a movie on Lifetime, and it's going to be released in 2014. It will be starring Ashley Jones and Alex Carter, so I'm sure Delaine is going to share more info about that upcoming movie. But in addition to being an author, she's a journalist, speaker, and an NLP therapist, and a Mars Venus business and life coach based out of Calgary, Alberta. So welcome, Delaine, and thank you for joining us today on the Family Law Insider podcast.
Hi, Wendy. Thank you for having me.
You are very welcome. So congratulations on the book and on the movie.
Yeah, thank you.
And so let's talk a little bit about the inspiration, because based on what I've gathered, the movie is based on your book. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes, it is.
Okay. So can you tell me, Delaine, what it was that inspired you to write the book?
Well, I was married for 7 years, and during that time I had 3 kids. And, you know, relationships, they just get complicated, and that's what I found myself in. And, you know, suddenly infidelities entered the picture, and I was spat out into a singlehood that I had no idea how to navigate. And the changes that happened that year in my life, they happened so hard and fast, and I needed an outlet. So I sat down to write this book thinking that nobody else was ever going to read it, but here we are a few years later, and there's a book, and yeah, now there's a movie.
Okay, that's awesome. So, Delaine, do you mind sharing whether your divorce experience was, I mean, it's always difficult, but in terms of just navigating through the process, was it a contested, highly fought type of divorce, or did it not take so long? What did you go through in that experience?
Well, on the actual legal side, it was up and down. I mean, for the first year, I'd say that was when it went the smoothest. It's interesting, you know, because actually getting that separation agreement together only took about a year before it was signed and sealed and the divorce decree came through. But interestingly enough, a lot of the ripples came after that. Like in a couple of years after that, that's when the disagreements started to occur. So I think it's important that people realize that over time, as situations change, as kids get older, that there can still be points of contention that arise along the way. And yes, the contention was serious. Yeah. And there were lawyers involved, and yeah, a lot of money was spent as well.
Oh, wow. That's never a good thing, especially if there's kids involved, because I think more than anybody, the kids could benefit from the money that's being spent on lawyers.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, the entire experience is, I mean, in hindsight now, I feel that I have a lot more empathy for people who go through highly contentious divorces. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. You definitely want to choose mediation first if you can. However, sometimes you have to use the strong arm of the law in order to come to an agreement.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. And also, I'm just curious, how old were your children when you started the divorce process?
My eldest was 6, and my middle child was 4, and I also, no, 6, 5, and 3 at the time. Yeah, so they were very young.
Very young.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that. I have a 3-year-old, just one child, and that's the thought of going through a divorce with the 3-year-old is overwhelming. I can't imagine having 3 young children.
Yeah, I mean, and I was a stay-at-home mom. I had left my career because my former husband worked out of town a lot of the time. So we made that decision thinking, well, why have kids if someone isn't around? And so, you know, that just, for me personally, that compounded the process even more, because there was always this fear, these issues around, you know, how am I going to reemerge back into the workforce and juggle most of the responsibilities for raising the children, because I knew that I was going to end up with them the majority of the time.
Okay.
Very, very, very fearful time. Like it really was a very challenging time. I wouldn't wish it on anyone, but it's a reality, and people can deal with it, but you got to deal with it one step at a time.
Okay. So, and you're talking about the struggles that people go through in the midst of divorce. And obviously, I want to get to the sex because I'm very interested in that, and I know, that's an area of focus for you. Aside from the legal struggles that you just talked about and the thought of facing single parenthood, what other struggles did you experience that led to you writing this book, Delaine?
Well, because in that first year after my divorce, like I said, the changes happened hard and fast. And I think for a lot of people that's the case. Because not only is your life as you've known it sort of crumbling down, you're also trying to take steps forward. And for a lot of people, myself included, that included dating. And so venturing into the dating trenches at a different stage of my life, with a different sense of identity, it was kind of like, what are the rules? What am I allowed to do? Who's going to want me as well? Because, I had all these fears and insecurities, single mom of 3 children, not understanding what the rules were. So I think it's a question. These are questions that a lot of people ask themselves going back out when it comes to the fears and the insecurities. How am I going to do this? Everybody is just as afraid as you are, though. That's the thing. We're all going through the same thing during that first year. I felt it was important to write specifically about that first year because, not because I was to find salvation in a new relationship, but to show that progress can be measured in small amounts. And so at the end of that year, I'm looking over my shoulder, looking back, and I'm going, wow, I really have come a long way, and I'm patting myself on the back and giving myself credit for that. But it's not as if I've been rescued by another relationship or by another man.
And Delaine, in hearing you talk, a lot of people that I come across in my divorce practice, they feel as though that they have lost themselves in the marriage and the caring of the children and just caring for other people. And was part of the journey that you were on a quest to rediscover who you were?
Absolutely. I think that I didn't know who I was and I didn't realize that. I think a lot of myself had gotten lost in the motherhood aspect of things. I mean, 3 young kids, whether you have 3 or whether you have 1, you give 100%. And there's no doubt. And so it was kind of like, who's Delaine the woman? And certainly I had no idea who Delaine the sexual being was.
Right.
And so during that first year, as I began to step further and further outside my comfort zone into the dating trenches, it was really interesting to reconnect with that passionate side of myself. Because, I'll admit, sex had become a chore when I was married. Okay. It seemed like everybody was always on top of me, wanting me, growing inside me, and then it was like my former husband, bless his heart, he was like one more person in the queue saying, I want something from you too.
Right.
And so I think a lot of it was about me needing to take care of myself, not just by dating, just all around as a woman, and to get to know myself. And dating was a vehicle for that, and my sexuality was a vehicle for that.
Okay. So, and I think that you have expressed sentiments that a lot of women who are mothers feel in terms of just feeling like people are on top of them all the time and losing or wanting to protect themselves in the relationship, so maybe losing a connection with the sexuality. I understand that. At what point in your divorce journey did you decide, hey, it's time to get out and date? And was there anything that you did before that in terms of, were you getting help, like emotional help or counseling or therapy?
Okay, first of all, I just want to can you hear this buzzing sound?
I don't hear anything.
No? Okay, all right, sorry, I'm just hearing something. Okay. I think I moved really fast. It was probably within a couple of months after my separation, and I walked into the dating trenches completely heartbroken as well. I do need to point out as well that there were infidelities involved. First, my ex-husband had an affair, and then I had an affair. And that person that I had been involved with, he cheated on me as well. So I never anticipated walking into being single again. I thought I was going from one relationship to another, so it was like a double whammy.
Yeah.
I moved really quickly into the dating trenches. And so it's not that I advise anybody else to do the same. That's what I needed to do. I was aware that I needed to heal. However, I didn't realize how much healing I needed to do. When I first went out, it was very much with the mission of seek and replace, because I just felt time was ticking and I needed to move really fast. And also just the idea of another relationship just would help take away the pain, right?
Yeah.
But what was interesting is that as time wore on, I began to realize that not only I'm not ready for a relationship, I think while I'm here, I'm going to take my time and kind of look around and find out more about what's going on and what's available in the single trenches. Because there's a lot of things that have changed since I had last been single.
Right.
And I thought, you know what? It's okay for me to take a little bit of time here, look around. And I'm a smart woman, and nobody else needs to know about what it is that I'm up to. So I gave myself permission to do just that. And I think that was the healthiest thing I could have done instead of just rebound into another relationship.
So you mentioned that you felt like initially time was ticking. Can you explain a little more about what was behind that feeling?
The time is ticking. Well, obviously it had something to do with the fact that at the time I was 37 years old. And I mean, nobody dreams about waking up at that age after being married for almost 10 years and being single again. So there was a real sense of urgency. Also, how am I going to meet anybody? That was another compounding factor. Almost my entire circle of friends are moms. And so it was like, I don't just have a mission, I have a very difficult mission ahead of me then I didn't know about online dating right off the bat. And so that really fed the urgency. I think that something else that fed the time is ticking is just this feeling that, men in my age group, they always say as you get older that there's less and less available. And it's like probably all the good ones have all been taken. And that was the wonderful thing about online dating. I hadn't realized while I was married that there was an entire realm, large pool of men out there that were single, had never been married, or were separated or going through a divorce, and the online dating put me in touch with that. And I had no idea that this was even going on. I was so entrenched in my marriage, in my married life, and in my mom life. So to even be put in contact with that was actually very exciting.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so you had made the decision then that you were going to take your time and explore these guys that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And so, sex, diving into dating, which leads to sex, I guess, with somebody you want to have sex with. That's scary. That's scary for most people, but I would imagine scary for anybody who's just coming out of a marriage, especially a marriage of 7 years with 3 children. So can you speak to the fear that a lot of divorced people feel when they're going into dating and potentially sex with these dating partners?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I mean, I can speak both personally and as a coach on that, because I find that some people completely retreat from the idea of dating and sex altogether. And other people are looking for that rebound relationship. They just want to get out of pain, and then you're allowed to have sex in the safety. But then there's this other group, which I guess I inadvertently fell into, who end up giving themselves time to sort of explore and see what's out there. And I mean, no doubt, at first, the first time experiences are scary. I mean, almost as much so as losing a virginity. I mean, maybe not quite that much, but it's certainly significant. You won't forget it, even if the sex wasn't great. But, again, we walk into that experience with all sorts of insecurities, and we all have them. My body had changed. I'd birthed 3 kids. Everything's a little bit lower. I'm that much older. And also, I mean, what's going to happen the next day? What if he doesn't call? What if I don't want him to call? What if I have a breakdown? What if the sex is horrible? I mean, there's all these what ifs, right? They just circle you like demons.
Right.
But at the same time, you know, when it's behind you, not that I'm advocating just go sleep with anybody, because I don't mean that at all, but when it's behind you, it gives an added sense of closure to your marriage, and it does still signify a reclaiming of your body and yourself as you continue to move forward.
Okay. So, Delaine, then, there's so many things I want to ask you about, and we only have limited time, but you just rambled off a whole list of things that people might be feeling that you went through. So, how did you deal with all of these insecurities and fears, and how would you suggest that somebody address them if they do want to get back into the dating and sex game, but they're haunted by all of these things?
Well, I mean, I think that we have to feel the fear and we have to do it anyway. I mean, obviously you have to try to make a good choice, and we're all adults here, and hopefully, I like to think that people are capable of doing that. You don't just randomly jump into bed with someone you don't know. Give people more credit than that. But again, I mean, if the next day you decide that it was a mistake, however you want to categorize that, you will do what you've done thus far in your divorce, and that is feel the pain, recalibrate, and move on. That's just what we do. And if there are any valuable lessons that came out of that, then you extract them and you take them with you. Because sexual experiences, just like a dating experience, everything has lessons in it for us to learn. It's not as if it was a waste of time. And as a grown adult, you can make those choices and change them if you need to. So give yourself some credit. I mean, it's interesting, because we often have this image of ourselves as we go back out there thinking that, it's almost like we're, inside of us, we're 20 years old again, like back before we got married. But I want to remind people, you've got all these years of experience behind you. And even though you're afraid, there's a woman, there's a man in there who's just a very capable and intelligent person, and who can deal with it. And that's all part of allowing yourself to expand, your self-image to expand as you move forward on your divorce journey. And we have this small idea of who it is we think we are, and we're going to start adding to that. And the dating journey is part of that. Sex journey.
I love it. I love this idea of expansion and just trusting yourself and what you're capable of.
See, and that's really key, Wendy, is learning how to trust yourself again. It's like, how am I going to be able to support myself, be a single parent, deal with friends, family, my changing identity? There's so many different aspects, and we're scared to death. We all are. Yeah. And, particularly in the realm of sexuality, when it comes for women, we've been so taught that we can't trust ourselves. We can't trust our bodies. We can't trust our desires. And so, to actually go out and experience things and say, I'm okay with this, even if it may not be what everyone else says I should be doing. There's a sense of, and I hate the word empowerment being thrown around all the time these days, but there really is a sense of strength and self-knowing that comes with making that choice for yourself.
That's awesome. So, in learning to trust yourself, did you have some interesting experiences, Delaine?
Well, Wendy.
Is there any you'd be willing to share? What are the things you discovered about sex and dating while you were on your journey?
Well, I mean, there's just so many different things. I mean, when I wrote my book, I didn't write it to try to titillate my readers. I figured that by the time we get to our age bracket, that all of us know what good sex looks like. But I guess one of the things that I was really surprised about is that there was so much more for me to learn. Like, I really just didn't realize that. I thought I knew my body well. I thought I knew what my body was capable of doing and not doing. And even in that respect, I was wrong.
Oh, wow.
What I discovered, I think, sort of in the big picture, is that my passionate self, that fiery part of who I am, I had really sublimated her in my role as a mom and a wife and so to reconnect with that energy and to allow sort of that fiery, bold, fun part of me to come out and maybe take more risks, not like crazy risks, but just to reconnect with that energy and to feel that. I mean, it's not just about sex, it's about just getting out there in life again. And I just become so, I don't know, I guess I hate to use the word boring, but responsible. I was responsible in so many respects. Yeah. And so what I consider risque, other people may not. But so, for example, I went to a sex club. So some people might go, you know. But for others, it's like, hey, no big deal. Did I participate in anything? No, I did not. However, I did go for an evening. Some people might judge me just for the fact that I set foot in a sex club. But that was a really interesting experience, and that brought me even more questions around relationships, around sexuality, where the boundaries are, what's okay, what's not okay. I also explored DS, which is dominant submission. And this was before the 50 Shades of Grey thing came out. I stumbled upon it all by myself. I had a couple of different relationships with men who I was learning from. I was learning about myself through my relationships with these men, constantly challenging them, constantly questioning them, but inevitably arriving at a place where I felt like I was comfortable with these relationships. And I ended up flying down to the United States because I am in Canada, and I did meet with a sexual dominant in the United States. And so I had my first sort of like hands-on experience with that sort of realm as well, which was, again, just a mind-blowing experience for me, not just physically or sexually, but emotionally, and sort of reclaiming emotional and mental power that I hadn't realized that I had gone without. Yeah. So I guess I would just say to people, everyone's unique. You've got your own boundaries, your own sense of self. Just be open to the possibility of more. And, whether it's, dipping your toe into new waters, you can do that, reassess, and if you want, you can go further. But again, at the end of the day, you're capable of making good choices for yourself. Just make sure your kids are completely, have nothing to do with any of it. My children had absolutely no idea of any of my goings-on, none whatsoever.
Yes.
Yeah. And just make sure you're using protection too. And people might say, oh, well, that's a given. But you know what? It's really not. When you come out of a marriage and you're not used to using protection, or you don't like using protection, it's a pain. And secondly, when people say to you, when you're out dating, and they say to you, oh, I haven't had sex in 2 years, or whatever their story might be, people lie. People lie, and you need to understand that. It's just not worth the risk. So make sure that you're using protection at all times.
Those are really great tips, of course. I mean, those are mandatory in this day and age, I think, and I hope, and everybody follow Delaine's advice in that area especially. Delaine, in hearing you describe a couple of your experiences, I felt afraid, and I'm in a marriage now, but I also related to your comment about becoming so responsible, and that's, I think that maybe a lot of women feel that way, and men as well. And so this fear about exploring boundaries, even with the committed partner, I mean, it's almost overwhelming, this fear of feeling judged maybe by a partner or potential partner. How did you get past the feeling that you might be judged, or that something was not natural because it wasn't something you were used to doing? Does that make sense?
I never felt judged by any of my partners per se, like myself. I attracted people who were kind of taking me to the next horizon, I guess you may say. Ask and you shall receive, I suppose, or when the student's ready, the teacher appears. I'm not sure how that goes. I wouldn't say, I don't know, I'm not too sure where you want me to go with this, because again, I think it comes down to you're a capable adult of making your own decisions. And it comes back to you being able to express what you want, know what you want, and get what you want as well. And I don't mean that in a nasty kind of way, but it's really just about saying, you know what, this is what I'm interested in now, and having some kind of faith in yourself to do it. In some ways, I felt like my life as a mom was, and my dating life, like they were almost like not two lives, because it's not like, I have multiple personality disorder or anything like that, or one was good and one was bad. But every person has different aspects to who they are. And, obviously as a mom or a father, you have responsibilities to your children. But that doesn't, you can still also have that other coexisting part of yourself, and it can be done responsibly. And that's what I did. Again, my children had no idea as to what was going on in my personal life. They've even said to me over the last 6 years, because it's been 6 years since I've been divorced, Mom, how come you never date? Well, yeah.
So do the kids know about your book and your movie, Delaine?
Yeah, they do. Yeah. Well, after the whole movie news broke up here in Canada, and I got quite a bit of publicity for it, it kind of became, inevitable. But they don't really understand what it's about. My kids are much older now. They're 13, 12, and 10. And, yeah, kids are funny. They it's like, yeah, my mom wrote a book, and yeah, anyways, what's for dinner, Mom? Like, it really, no big deal. So, but they're my number one priority, and obviously I continue to monitor, their response. And the movie that's coming out, because it's on Lifetime, I mean, it is very much a toned-down version of what the book is. It's what they needed to do to make it airable, so I understand that. I think that a lot of the lessons are much richer to be able to sit down and read. But that being said, it'll be really exciting to watch, to see how the storyline is depicted on TV. I did get to go on set and meet the actors and, be a part of that experience on some level. And just for me personally, it was, not only was it so strange to watch other people acting out my life, but to know all the work that went into the book and the publishing, and then now all of a sudden there's, these actors and all these people with jobs, and just that it all came out of my pain, my experience, the most horrendous period of my life, because truly my divorce was very difficult. And so I guess I just offer that as words of inspiration, because I remember times, and this is a big deal because I'm a mom, where I felt like I don't care if I get hit by a truck today. And that's a pretty big statement for a mom to make. Yeah. It felt so hopeless and just so directionless. And obviously, after what has happened to me, if it can happen to me, I know it sounds so cliche, but it can really happen to anyone. You just don't know what is around the corner. You just don't know.
Oh, and those are fantastic words to end on. But before we end, I want to make sure people know how they can find you. And just for the people out there listening, I am going to include links to the book and the website, and also Delaine. So tell us how to reach you, and also when is the movie coming out?
Well, the air date actually hasn't been set yet.
Okay.
So originally I had heard May, but no, that's not happening. So probably in the fall, but Lifetime, I'm sure, will be doing a lot of publicity around that. Also, I'll have links of it on my website, which is IamDivorcedNotDead.com, and that's my blog. And then my coaching site, because I do specialize in divorce recovery, working with men and women. I trained with Dr. John Gray, author of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. That website is called DelaineMoore.com. And my book is available pretty much in all the bookstores as well as online and internationally as well. So it's called The Secret Sex Life of a Single Mom.
Hey, I'm going to be ordering it right after we get off here, Delaine. So thank you for giving us your time. I look forward to seeing the movie and seeing more of you.
Oh, thank you, Wendy. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And that's going to do it for this episode of the Family Law Insider podcast. Remember, we're on your side when it matters most, and I will see you next time.